Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Lorraine Murphy Show. So we are talking about money this week. So the topic I'm talking to as part of this week's episode is peaceful revenue. So what it is, how does it work, how can you create it in your own business? And this is, I guess, an excerpt from my recent Success Without Sacrifice event. So if you're not aware, I hosted a one-day event in Sydney, which is my only event outside of any of my paid mentoring containers, and it happened in August, and I had 35 women at a beautiful space in Sydney, and within that day I talked about 4 different pillars. So the third session just after lunch was all around peaceful revenue, and I know that there was a lot that resonated for the group out of what I shared, so I thought it would be hopefully helpful and instructive to you today for me to riff a little bit on what peaceful revenue is, and also, I guess, stepping through and sharing some of my own journey in this space, and also the experience with some of my mentees as well. The reality for many women in business, based on my many years of mentoring now, is that peaceful revenue it feels the opposite for a lot of women in business. So money feels stressful, overwhelming, exhausting, draining, anxiety-inducing, depressing, deflating. This can often be kind of the standard money story when it comes to business finance for a lot of women. And I know that to be true from, as I said, my own adventures in mentoring, but also very much from my own personal experience. So if you don't know, I've been in business for 13 years, just over 13 years now. And I started my first business with 0 business experience in my spare bedroom, and that went on to be a multi-million-dollar business. So that was great. We were making a lot of money in that business. However, that revenue was very lumpy. And what I mean by lumpy is that we would get very little, kind of famine, and then we get a big hit of cash, and then famine. So it was very lumpy. And also I spent a lot of money that I didn't need to spend in that business. So there were always investments in the business. However, when I look back, there are so many things that I would change in terms of how I was managing the inflow and where that money was being channeled to within the business. And it was also deeply unpredictable. So I pretty much started every single quarter at 0, had to go out and hustle and scrabble and fill that quarter of revenue. So it was very unpredictable. It was very lumpy. It just felt very precarious, the money, even though it was like, I guess the public perception was that the money was great, and the money was great. We were doing really well in terms of bringing the money in. But in terms of the infrastructure that I was building around the money and the predictability of the money was not great. So I ran that business for almost 6 years, and then I sold it. And then I started my second business, which is essentially my mentoring business. So I've written 4 books, obviously host this podcast, I do speaking, and then run my mentoring business. So from my top tier Magnificence program through to my Bold Rally Mastermind, through to kind of smaller offers and ad hoc events, and obviously host my retreats in Bali as well. So when I started this business, I had sold the first business, had done quite well financially out of that sale, and I was like, cool, let's start this second one. And pretty much the same month that I kind of officially started this second business, I got a 6-figure bill from the ATO, which was related to a grant that we had been approved for back in 2015, so 3 years earlier. And the ATO was essentially looking into every company who had had a grant processed by this particular grant application company, and had found that this company were quite dodgy, and they were almost like going back on the decisions that they had made in 2015, and were issuing every company that had used this grant company with a bill for I don't know what everyone else's was, but mine was pretty scary. And that was just the ultimate smackdown, as the very early days of starting a new business, being excited for this new chapter, and then just getting this horrible bill completely out of nowhere. It was horrible, a really, really horrible time. So what I then needed to do was start this second business from square one, but also to be almost rebuilding my money story alongside that. So it was just a very shitty start to this second business. But obviously when I started the business, I've been running it now for 7 years. And if I was to give you kind of the summary of this one, it was very lumpy for the first 4 years, because I guess all I had known was the financial setup of the previous business. And I was kind of almost expecting or used to the lack of certainty, the lack of visibility, predictability, all the things. So After 4 years, I felt like, okay, this is just too stressful. Like it's the very same money story as the previous business. It was just feeling very anxious in my nervous system in terms of managing the revenue and the money and the profit coming into the business. And that was pretty much a bit of a watershed moment for me. So what I'm talking 2021, when we were right in the midst of COVID, our little boy Wilder was born that year as well. And it was just a bit of an enough is enough moment. Like, this is shit. I am stressed. I am waking up in the middle of the night worrying about revenue and worrying about cash flow. And I just want better. Like, I want better for me. I want better for our family. I want better for the business. And so I started to make some small decisions, made a few big decisions. And I guess if you want to fast forward the before and after, the real thing I started to focus on was, how can I make money peaceful in my business? How can I make this a positive, empowering, spacious part of my business, rather than this part of my business that when I think of it, I just feel like so contracted and anxious and stressed. So there's a lot that I changed, and a couple of those things I will talk about in today's episode. But in terms of the situation today, almost like a before and after. Like, in the past, I've been used to very lumpy revenue, and now being very focused consistently on monthly recurring revenue. So rather than just chasing the dollars, instead chasing the monthly recurring revenue. So what that is it's money that's locked in, and you know it's coming in every single month. So the position I'm in now is that I've got over $60,000 a month that's coming in that is monthly recurring revenue, which is life-changing. You know, when I think back to those quarters where I had no idea what was coming in that quarter, could I afford to hire this person? Everything was winging it. So having that level of income coming in consistently every month just changes, A, my nervous system, but B, how I run my business. It's been completely game-changing. And then obviously any kind of incremental revenue on top of that is wonderful and celebrated. However, what I'm really focused on is that monthly recurring revenue. It's really, really key. The other thing is, in the past, I have paid myself a salary that was way below, what market rate would be if I was to step in as a CEO of someone else's coaching business. What I could command was a lot higher than what I was paying myself. So the situation today is I've doubled my salary that I'm paying myself every fortnight in my business in the last year. Finance in the past felt very ad hoc, very draining, very reactive, like just kind of a lot of scrabbly energy, like scratching and scrabbly energy. And now it feels very solid. I've got very solid structures. I've got very solid systems. I've got really solid team. And it just brings a lot more stability and security and safety to the whole money space within my business. And also in the past, it felt like it was a bit of a fingers crossed approach. Like, oh, I hope I hit my target. I've pulled this figure out of my ass and let's hope I hit it. It was in that fingers crossed type energy. And now there's clear targets and I'm tracking them monthly. And I know straight away if I'm falling behind on targets or if I'm ahead of targets, or if I'm right on the nose of those targets. A lot of clarity. So all up, if I was to summarize, it really feels like finance is it's a positive force within my business now. It's empowering, it's calming, and it's, as I said, it's safe, it's secure, it's solid, it's trusted. It just gives me this whole flagstone and foundation that I can go forth, and build my business from. So in terms of how you get there also, the first thing I want to do is to ask you a question. So I asked the group in actually my Success at Sacrifice Masterclass and my event is, what if finance actually, or what if money actually made you feel more regulated, grounded, and safe in your business? So what if money actually made you feel more regulated, more grounded, and more safe in your business? And I really want you to think about that, even if you want to hit pause for a second before I keep going, and just really think about what would that shift for you in your nervous system? What would that shift for you in your business? What would that shift for you and your loved ones, your family if you have one, the goals, the aspirations that you hold for yourself? What would that shift for you if money was regulated, grounded, and safe for you? Because that's the journey I've been on. That's why I didn't want to share everything's amazing in my world of money, because this is this. Like, I wanted to share the full narrative with you so you can see that it is possible. I want to, again, talk a lot about having a look at me brand versus a come with me brand. Like, I want you to come with me. I want you to see the journey that I have been on, and also, of course, the journey that I want to continue to be on as well. So really think about that question. So in terms of why peaceful revenue matters, I probably don't need to spell this out for you, but I will just in case. First of all, and this is what I see in my world, is that women are making more in their businesses, but they're feeling worse. Like the cash is coming in, but they're actually feeling worse. The second thing that I notice is that revenue built on pressure leads to burnout. And I identify with that so much. When I think back to those quarters where it was just starting every quarter from zero and just the pressure, particularly when I had 6, 7 full-time team members like that, and myself, I was a lot. And inevitably that leads to burnout if you don't create a way that's more gentle on your nervous system around money. The third then as well is that it's like a strategic nervous system decision. So focusing on building in more peaceful revenue into your business, it's better for you. It's better for your nervous system, which is just better for everyone around you by association as well. So in terms of what peaceful revenue is, so I've given you some examples of what represents peaceful revenue to me in my world. There's 3, I guess, core qualifiers for peaceful revenue. The first one is that it's predictable. So you know what's coming in and when it's coming in. Really, really key. Because I think, and I've shared with you already, in my first business and for most of the second business, I never had that predictable income. I didn't know what was coming in. I didn't know when it was coming in. The second element of peaceful revenue is that it is simple. So what this means is that you've got a clear offer suite. People know who you are, they know what you're selling, and it just all makes sense. I'll talk more about that one in a sec. And then the third one then is that it's profitable. Like you're getting to enjoy and you're getting to keep the money that you're making within your business. So they are the 3, I guess, as I said, almost like precursors or qualifiers for what peaceful revenue is. That it's predictable, it's simple, and it's profitable. And I really want to say, I'm saying this from my heart to your heart, I want you to know that this is possible for everyone. I have worked with mentees I had one mentee who had a bricks and mortar business and she had not paid herself a salary for 14 years. She'd pulled out bits and pieces to top up the mortgage as and when she needed to, but she had not paid herself a consistent salary. I have worked with mentees who are 60, 70K in debt, whether it's through real estate or through business. They've had overdrafts, they've had credit cards. I've worked with mentees who every single month for years, that whatever came in went straight back out the door again on expenses, bills, all the things. And as I've already shared with you, I've been on my own really rocky journey when it's come to money and business as well. So I really want you to know, and I want you to feel this in your body and in your nervous system, that this peaceful revenue is possible for everyone. What's going to stop you getting to peaceful revenue is these 5 sabotaging patterns, which I'm going to take you through in today's episode. I'm not going to go into huge detail on these. I did a masterclass for my Bold Darling Mastermind, which was specifically around peaceful revenue, and we really got into the nuts and bolts of this. Obviously, given this is a shorter podcast episode, this is more about highlighting the patterns so you can, I guess as an initial step, start to cultivate some awareness of maybe the patterns that you are holding on to and embodying unwillingly and probably unwittingly in your business right now. So the first pattern that's going to steal your peace and hold you back from peaceful revenue is climbing into other people's wallets. So this term was introduced to me by an amazing woman called Kendall Summerhawk. She was actually the creator of the Sacred Money Archetypes, which you may be familiar. She trained Denise Duffel-Thomas in the Sacred Money Archetypes. So Kendall, I said to her, what's the biggest mistake you see women making when it comes to business? And she's like an awesome American, like old school business coach. And she said, it's climbing into other people's wallets. And I said, what do you mean by that? Like, what the hell do you mean? And what she means by that, it's us projecting our own insecurities onto other people and limiting ourselves in terms of the potential that we can make for the money we can make in our business. So how I see that come through for mentees is they apologize for their prices, they undercharge, they discount. Sometimes they don't even bring an offer to a client in the first place. And I've done this myself. So I have an amazing mentee based in the UK. And whenever I went back to Ireland, I went back to Ireland like 2-3 years in a row, and she came and spent the day with me 2 years in a row. So we'd have a VIP day together in Irish summer. She'd fly over from the UK and we'd have a full day and have a real nice dinner, and she'd go back to the UK. And I was talking in a podcast episode actually about my plans. I tend to do like an episode where I share my goals for the year ahead. It's like max accountability for me, because if I put it out here on the show, I bloody better make it happen. And I was sharing in this podcast episode that I created this top tier mentoring program. It was called the Magnificence Program, and how excited I was that I was talking to women and they were stepping into it. And my mentee reached out to me and she said, hey, I listened to your podcast episode and you talked about this Magnificence Program. Do you think that would be something for me? And where she was at that point, she had just resigned from her job, and her and I had spent the last VIP day planning out what her new business was going to look like. And I realized that I had thought of her for Magnificence Program because I knew I would love to work with her more closely. However, I told myself, oh, she wouldn't have the money because she's just starting the business and she wouldn't have the cash. So I didn't even take it to her. So can you see how disempowering that was for my mentee, that I didn't even give her the chance to learn about Magnificence Program, let alone whether or not she wanted to step in or not. I took that choice away from her and I made the decision for her. So this is what Kendall means by climbing into other people's wallets, when we make assumptions about what they can or can't or would like to afford, and we minimize ourselves and our revenues, or our revenue offers, our sales, and in doing so we minimize them because we don't give them the chance to decide whether or not they would like to partake of whatever particular offer it is. It is a really, really toxic money mindset habit that so many of us run. The second limiting pattern that will steal your peace is having an overwhelming or a missing offer suite. So if you have an offer suite where people look at it and go, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. There's just so many things on the table here. I don't get it. Or if there's a really obvious offer that maybe people have been asking for, but you haven't put together for whatever reason, having an incomplete or an overwhelming offer suite is a guaranteed way to steal your peace when it comes to finance, because you yourself are going to be very confused as to where everything's at and what you should be doing. And I can guarantee you that if you are confused, that your ideal customer is super duper confused. Denise Duffel-Thomas has a really good quote. She's a money mindset expert who I adore. And she says that a confused mind says no. So if you are confused, I guarantee that your ideal customer is confused, and I guarantee you that they are going to say no. So within my Bold Darling Mastermind, we work with something called an ascension model, which is very simple, but it's very, very powerful. And it's essentially the infrastructure that I've built my entire business over. So when I had a bit of a wake-up call 4 years ago in 2021 and said, okay, this is just too hard. It's not making enough money. What am I doing? The first thing I actually did was map out the ascension model. And the last 3 years of my business has been about getting the business aligned with almost that blueprint that I created with that original ascension model 3 years ago. So being very clear about what your offers are in order to minimize confusion for you as the business owner, but also to your ideal customer as well. So the next money pattern that is probably going to be stealing your peace and creating the opposite of peaceful revenue for you is making your revenue completely dependent on your energy. So what I mean by that is maybe you're the only one in your business selling, which is completely fine. That's so many businesses that is the case. Or maybe it is that you are selling, but everything is dependent on, word of mouth, relationship-based sales. There's nothing predictable or automated or systemized in terms of your sales strategy. What happens when you are operating from that, your revenue being totally dependent on your energy, is first of all, there's almost like a baked in pressure and an urgency on that and a responsibility on your shoulders, which can feel really crushing. And also what can happen is if you are in that space over a sustained period of time, is that you start to head towards burnout. And I've seen this happen for many mentees in the past as well. So if you are listening to this going, holy crap, every dollar that I make in my business is completely dependent on my revenue and my energy, then that is something to, well, first of all, as always, just to start to cultivate some awareness around. But secondly, starting to think about, okay, what would this look like if it was gentler and kinder on me? And really giving yourself permission to take the blinkers off, because we can get so ingrained in our business of doing things the way things have always been done, even if it's our own business and we've got full sovereignty and license to change whatever the hell we want to change. So really starting to explore, what would this look like if I was to reimagine this in a way that it's less dependent on me? The fourth peace stealing pattern that I see women doing is letting profit slip through their fingers. So I've already touched on this one for me in my first business. As I said, it was making great money, but I was just not focused on profit. I was finding all these different excuses to invest in the business. And what I really underline for my mentees is that profit is a boundary. It's not a bonus. And I find that so many women, if they have a profitable month, they're like, yay, this is great. They almost see it as like cherry on top rather than, no, this is what it should be. And we all have months where we have losses because we've invested more heavily. You know, if I'm launching, generally profit is a lot lower that month because it's just an expensive month in my business with all the creative and the extra team hours and all the things. So really thinking about this, your standard, like your basic benchmark in your business should be that you are making a healthy profit. Maybe it's not going to be every single month. Maybe it's not going to be every single year that it's, you know, a banging profit, but that should be what you're aiming for and you are protecting as much as you possibly can. Because I'm just going to be really bloody direct here. You know, if you are not paying yourself a decent salary within your business, and if you are not seeing a decent, healthy profit in your business, well, what the fuck are you doing it for? This is when I find women start to hit the seek searches to see, okay, what job could I do because this business thing is just way too hard. We need to see money as an energy exchange. So I will pay the money for something that I feel like I'm going to get the equivalent or more energy back from. So a nice handbag is a really good example of that. So for you as well, you know, if you are not getting the money back from your business, if you're not making profit and a decent salary from your business, the energy exchange is off. Does that make sense? Like the contract's wrong. So you are not going to be able to show up consistently in your business if the profit is not there. If you don't feel like you're getting the equivalent energy that you're putting into your business back in the form of money, you know, cash in your bank account, well, of course you're not going to want to do this long term, because why would you? Because you're not getting the energy exchange. It's out of whack. It's not working. There's something functionally, systemically not working there. So really seeing your profit as it's your birthright. It's what you're entitled to. It's what you should expect to have in your business. And I really want to say that if this is activating for you or triggering for you that I'm saying this right now, I really just want you to know I see you. Like I really do see you, because I've been where you've been in the past multiple times in business. I also want you to know that it is possible to turn this around. It is so possible to turn this around with the right strategy, with the right mindset, with the right clarity, and focusing on the right things. It is possible to turn it around. So in terms of profit, obviously recognizing a solid profit in your business consistently, but secondly, when money is coming in, it's doing, you know, managing that profit well. So I've talked about Profit First a lot in the past. So it's a book written by Mike Michalowicz. So it's a book called Profit First, and in it, essentially, it talks about how you allocate your profit across your business. So that is something that I do religiously in my business every second Thursday. And there's a whole other world. There's past episodes on Profit First. If you'd like me to revisit it on the show, I'm very happy to do so as well. But please see your profit as a boundary. It is not a bonus. It's not a nice to have. It's your basic boundary in your business. The fifth money stealing pattern that I see is women operating without financial clarity. So when I think back, you know, if I think about the different women that I've worked with over many years of doing this kind of work, there is a minuscule amount of them who start their business because they love the numbers and getting into the Excel spreadsheets and the Xero and the MyOb and the QuickBooks or whatever it might be, like minuscule. And those people generally go on to start accounting firms or bookkeeping firms or financial advice firms because that's what they like to do. So if you are sitting here right now listening or walking to this, or you're driving or cooking or whatever you might be doing, folding laundry, and you are still doing your own bookkeeping in your business and you are not a bookkeeper or an accountant, can I please suggest heartily that you change that situation ASAP? Because what happens is if we don't have the financial visibility and where the numbers are at in our business, we cannot make educated decisions on the future and the strategy of a business. We also cannot sleep at night because we don't know where we're at. We don't know, are we okay? Like, are we okay? That's the biggest question I find women have when it comes to finance in their business. Am I okay? Like, is there enough cash to get me through what I need to do? Like, is there enough cash to pay my team? Is there enough cash to invest in that new car for the business or whatever it might be? Like, am I okay? Is it okay to do this? So really seeking that financial clarity will completely change your world. And actually, interestingly, I find that women avoid this one because they tell themselves that things are so bad that they don't want to know. It's like classic ostrich in sand type thing, where they would rather just not know and just fingers crossed, you know, and just going to fly by the seat of my pants and hope that everything's okay. And it is such a precarious, stressful, draining place to be. And again, I've been there, so I can speak with authority from that. So like with any industry, there are lazy bookkeepers and accountants. There are amazing bookkeepers and accountants. So really what you want, you know, these lazy ones are not for you. They're not for you, my dear. So what you really want in your finance team is you want them to be proactive. You want them to be forward facing. So looking to the future rather than telling you how things were a month ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And you want them to have your back. Like you really want to feel solid and supported by them. And you want to feel like they are invested in your success. So I've had this to varying degrees over the last 13 years of business. The current finance team that I have are the best that I've ever had in my business. They've been with me, we're coming up on a year next month. So having this visibility, having this monthly meeting where we go through in detail where everything is at with the money, where it's been, where it's going, even if it's not great news for whatever reason, I know where I stand. I know exactly where I stand, and that makes me feel really safe and really empowered as a business owner. So, when we think about peaceful revenue, I do not want you to see this as kind of passive or like a bit floaty, a bit woo-woo. Peaceful revenue is strategic, it is empowered, and it is yours for the taking. I really want to underline what I've said a couple of times in this episode already. This is yours for the taking. This is not something that's available to other people. I promise you, no matter how dire your situation feels right now, if you want to turn around your businesses or your business and you want to turn around your finance and you've got the will to do that, then it's just a matter of getting the right support around you, the right strategy, and just getting moving. Like start moving forward, even if it's the smallest possible steps to start to, you know, I talk a lot about, you know, spiraling, that we spiral down. So it's not about necessarily, you know, if you feel like you're spiraling down when it comes to finance, about correcting the spiral and all of a sudden you're up here again. It's step one is just to stop the spiral. And then step two is to gradually, slowly start to get that spiral going upwards. So please remember, this is yours for the taking. I really want to be a walking, talking example of someone who has turned around their money situation multiple times in business over the last 13 years. So I really want you to have faith in yourself and your potential and your ability to do this. If you like this episode, I would love for you to jump on wherever you are right now and give us a quick rating and also subscribe to the show. And also, you know, particularly because finance can be a really emotional, activating topic. If there is a friend that you know in business right now or a family member who's struggling in this space, please do send them this episode and tell them that it's with love and it is containing some solid nuggets that will really help them. I would also really love to hear from you on Instagram. So if you come join me on Insta, if we're not already connected, it's at Lorraine Murphy Mentor. Please do let me know what your biggest takeout was from this week's episode. I absolutely love hearing from podcast listeners and hearing what their biggest takeouts were. And also, if you've got any requests going forward, please do let me know in there as well, because I'm always ears open. I always leave some space in my seasons to plan in kind of some ad hoc episodes as well. Now, the last thing as well, I recently, just on the topic of money, I recently completed a 6-figure launch. So it was the cruisiest, easiest, flowiest launch that we have ever done. And it was also the most profitable. So I have written a 16-page Google Doc debrief. It was primarily for my top tier mentees, but there was so many nuggets in there that I was like, I need to send this wider. So if you would like to get your hands on that debrief, just come over to Insta to me. I'll pop a link in the show notes as well. Or you can just come to Insta, just DM me debrief, and then you will get it dropped into your inbox and your Insta inbox straight away. Thank you so much for joining this week's episode. It has been so good recording this for you, and I really hope that it has planted some seeds, maybe planted some awareness, and maybe some seeds in terms of what positive actions you can take to get yourself into a space where you're living and breathing and embodying that peaceful revenue in your business day to day. Thank you, and I will see you again next week for next week's episode.